The unthinkable is happening right now in Washington. For the first time in his presidency, Donald Trump isn't battling Democrats. He's battling his own party. And this time, it's not behind closed doors. Republican senators are standing up and publicly drawing a line in the sand against him. This isn't just political theater. This is the moment where the fate of American power is being tested. Why does this matter to you? Because the outcome could change how decisions are made in this country for decades. So why are Republicans turning on their own leader? And what does this mean for you, the average American? Stick around. You won't want to miss this. Here's what's really going on. It's not just about party loyalty or a few outspoken senators. There's a much bigger issue at play. You've got military threats against NATO allies, emergency declarations over foreign oil, and a complete breakdown of accountability from Washington. And it's all happening at once. But here's the kicker. Why are Republicans suddenly willing to break with Trump now? After all, they've been through so much with him. What's different this time? It's not just the typical party division. It's about power and who controls it. When the White House starts making decisions with zero checks and balances, everyone in Washington feels the pressure. But when it's your own party turning against you, that's when you know things are changing. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Here's the first big reveal. Last week, Republican senators joined with Democrats to pass something called a War Powers Resolution. Sounds technical, right? But stay with me. This was huge. This wasn't some symbolic vote or a narrow margin. It was a direct message to the White House. You do not get to start wars without Congress. So why was this resolution even necessary? Because Donald Trump, out of nowhere, started talking about military action against Greenland. Yes, Greenland. Not a joke, not a negotiating tactic, actual military action. And here's the part most people don't get. Greenland is not some random territory in the Arctic. It belongs to Denmark, a NATO ally. And when a U.S. president floats military options against a NATO member, it's not just a diplomatic issue, it's a full-blown constitutional crisis. Now, take a second and think about it. Why didn't Trump's own party immediately shut this down? Why are they willing to cross him now? Notice what's missing here. No one's denying the seriousness of his actions. What they're saying is, we're not going to let you go this far. And that's a line Trump never thought they would cross. And just when you thought it couldn't get crazier, it does. Trump's reckless talk about military action against Greenland wasn't the only crisis on the table. At the same time, he declared a national emergency over Venezuelan oil assets. Now, this is where things really start to heat up. Here's why. This wasn't a real emergency. Venezuela's oil infrastructure has been a disaster for years. There's no crisis to justify the declaration. It's more of a political maneuver. And that's exactly what it is, a power grab. By declaring an emergency, Trump centralized authority and bypassed Congress again. Now, think about this for a second. Why, right in the middle of a war powers showdown, does he suddenly need another emergency? It's not about oil, it's about control. It's about distracting everyone while the heat is on and consolidating power in ways that bypass the very processes meant to hold him accountable. But this isn't the first time. We've seen this before. Trump has used emergency powers for border walls, for COVID responses, for trade restrictions. And every time he's stretched the definition of what constitutes an emergency. And Republicans are just starting to realize once you normalize this level of unilateral power, it doesn't just disappear when your party loses the White House, it stays forever. Now let's rapidly stack a few more crises because things are spiraling fast. Trump's national emergency over Venezuela isn't an isolated move. It's part of a bigger strategy. While all of this is unfolding, there's been little to no progress on promised transparency, promised document releases, or inspector general reviews. It's all stalled. And don't forget the War Powers Resolution. It was more than just a vote. It was a clear signal that even Republicans are starting to hit their breaking point. The pressure's mounting on every side now. You've got military threats, national emergencies, and an accountability vacuum in Washington. The stakes have never been higher. What happens if this continues? What happens if the machinery of unchecked power continues to grind forward with no resistance? We've already seen the cracks begin to form in Trump's own party. But what's next? Where does this end? Because right now it's a game of who can push harder. And the cost is nothing short of the future of American democracy. But let's shift the focus. Forget Washington for a second. Let's talk about you. How does this affect the everyday person? The ones watching their grocery bills rise and their retirement accounts swing wildly with every new headline? You voted for change, for economic security and for fewer wars. But now, while inflation's still stubbornly high, you're hearing about military threats against NATO allies and emergency declarations over oil. You're watching promises about transparency and accountability fall apart. How does this add up? It doesn't. And here's where the real damage starts. Voters don't separate foreign policy from kitchen table economics. You can't just ignore the global instability when your paychecks don't stretch as far as they used to. When the president is threatening military action against an ally, it shakes the very foundation of stability, and that hits home. And it's not just about you. Small business owners are watching this unfold too. They depend on stability, on predictable policy, on reliable international trade relationships. What happens when that stability starts to crumble? Uncertainty. The same uncertainty that affects your 401k, your job, your business. This isn't just about one man or one party. It's about a much deeper problem in the system itself. When power is unchecked, it doesn't just harm the president's opponents, it damages everyone. Here's the uncomfortable truth. There's a mechanism behind this that allows it to happen. It's not about Trump or any one individual. It's about leverage. It's about incentives. And it's about spectacle. Every time an emergency is declared, every time an issue is buried beneath the latest crisis, the system weakens. It gets harder to tell the difference between real issues and manufactured distractions. This isn't just politics, it's a breakdown in how power works in America. When Congress can't stand up to the president's emergency powers, when the courts become political battlegrounds, and when the media gets caught up in the chaos, the foundations of democracy are eroded, slowly, quietly, and then it's gone. And that's what's truly terrifying about this moment. It's not just about Trump, it's about the system that allowed him to gain this much control. And once it's broken, it doesn't easily come back. So where does this go from here? Let's talk about two possible paths. First, if the resistance from Republicans holds, we could see a real shift, a rebalancing of power. Congress reasserts its authority. The courts start pushing back. And this emergency power madness gets checked before it can go too far. It's not the cleanest outcome, but it's a path where American democracy survives. But then there's the other path. If the pressure from the White House continues, if the crises keep escalating and the distractions keep piling up, we could be watching a presidency that operates beyond institutional limits. A precedent is set where the president doesn't just push against checks and balances, but completely ignores them. And once that happens, there's no turning back. The damage is done, and it will shape American governance for decades. The thing is, we don't know which way this is going yet. What we do know is that it's moving fast. And if Republicans continue to resist, it's going to get messier before it gets clearer. The next 30 to 90 days will determine whether the institutions hold or whether they crumble. Here's the takeaway. This is a moment of truth. Republicans aren't just pushing back against Trump. They're standing up for the very framework that holds this country together. They're deciding whether American democracy answers to the law or to one man's will. And that's the real question we all need to be asking. Do we want a president who can bypass checks and balances, who treats international alliances like a game of real estate, and who ignores accountability when it suits him? Or do we want a government that works with limits, with oversight, with respect for the law? So what happens next? We're heading into a crossroads. Can Congress hold its ground? Can the courts maintain independence? Can voters recognize the stakes before it's too late? The next chapter of this story is already unfolding, and it's going to be a fight for the soul of American democracy. If this analysis helped you see the bigger picture, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This story isn't over. It's just getting started. And remember, democracy doesn't protect itself. It relies on people willing to defend it when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's politically risky. That defense is happening right now. Whether it succeeds depends on whether enough of us are paying attention. Thanks for watching.